Have you ever wondered why two children of the same age can behave completely differently? Why one child becomes very respectful, another child is very rude? Why one child can dream big and another child is too stuck in survival mode to even dream at all? Most parents think that the answer is parenting. Of course, parenting matters, but there is something that many parents are not paying attention to, something that is quietly shaping their children every single day, without permission, without money, without noise, their environment. And whether we realize it or not, environment teaches even before parents start teaching. Hi Impact parents, welcome to Parenting for Impact. And today we'll be looking at another interesting topic I have titled Your Environment is Raising Your Child Too. So this topic we are basically going to be looking at the influence of the environment on your child's development. So that is just what this topic is all about. So quickly, let's look at what is the environment. When we think about the environment, most people are quick to think about the buildings, the road, the vegetation around us, the weather, the nature. But a child's environment is even way deeper than that. A child environment includes everything outside the child that constantly influences who they become. Everything outside the child that constantly influences who they become. The people around them, the language they hear every single day, the culture they grow in, the beliefs that are normal in that space, the social habits they repeatedly see, the economic reality around them, the community values, and even more importantly, the country they grow in. All this represents the environment of a child. And we are going to be looking at the environment in in different contexts, such as the kind of country a child grows in and the community environment. So let's start with the biggest environment of all, the country itself. For example, a child that is growing up in Nigeria experiences something unique. But I would like to mention that every environment has its strengths and challenges. So for a child that is growing up in Nigeria, experiences something very unique. There is strength, there is resilience, there is faith and strong religious exposure, there is strong family and extended family system, there is community involvement. Children growing up in this kind of environment often learn how to endure difficulties, adapt to changing situations easily, and have this mindset of we can move forward no matter the obstacle. They can easily move forward. Now, these are powerful strengths. Just like every other environment, it has its strengths and it has its own challenges. Challenges such as insecurities in some region, economic pressure, systems that are not always stable. Now, a child living in this environment may learn resilience early, but may also learn how to normalize stress as part of daily life. Now, let's compare this to a child living in countries such as Canada, Finland, or Japan, where there is more structure, more predictability, stronger systems that work, and there is longer protection of childhood. Both children are learning something unique. Now, the question is not which country is better. The idea is not to compare the country that is better, but the environment teaches different lessons. But the question is, what is the environment teaching the child every single day? Imagine two children. One grows up where generator runs all through the night, people are constantly hustling, children plays outside the streets, neighbors know each other, and stress is part of or normal part of daily life. And another grows up where system works, streets are quieter, rules are reinforced consistently, opportunities are structured, and childhood is protected for a longer time. Now, both children are learning something differently. They are being exposed to different environments and they are being shaped or educated even before school ever begins. The environment is already teaching them what life should look like. That is just the difference. Now let's bring it down to the grassroots. Let's look at some selected communities in Nigeria, because it is in the community that children are shaped. This is where children are really shaped. So, for example, let's take communities like Ajegule in Lagos, Nigeria, which is popularly known as AJ City. Just like I said before, every environment has its own strengths and challenges, and Ajegule is no exception. It has produced strong individuals, people that are resilient, musicians, entrepreneurs, international footballers, athletes, people that have learned how to survive and thrive even in difficult situations. And this is also a powerful strength. But just like every other environment, it has its own challenges. Adekunle is one of the places that hosts hundreds of different ethnic groups come together to live in a particular place, and it has high population density. It has vibrant street culture, meaning a child that is growing there is termed smart, but might not likely be smart in the right way. And aggressiveness is like a normal way of communication. And when you come out of the street, you're likely to see someone smoking around the corner, someone taking a go, that's this herbal stuff, and a lot of things that you just see. Now that is just like the background of the environment that are growing up in this environment. They are learning something, and they have high chances of exposure to adult conversation too early, and they have this survivor mindset, and certain behaviors that should be corrected early becomes normal life. So I want to quickly share with us this experience I had in Ajegule. I and my older sister, sometime in my teenagehood, went to visit a friend of hers in Ajegule. And when we got there, they naturally wanted to entertain us with something. So they asked, what are we going to take? And they asked me, what would you like to drink? So I said, I'm going to take mots. And they laughed. They were like, ah, we don't take mots here. So I was like, before I could even think of another alternative or just change my mind, you're like, they just ordered somebody, go and get everybody drink, and they said, get her the alcohol with the drink with the lowest alcohol content. That was just the instruction they gave to the little boy that wanted to go and buy the drink. And the guy returned, bought drinks for everyone, and actually came back with the drink with the lowest alcohol content, and that was Smirnoff Ice. And that was my very first time tasting Smirnoff Ice. Now this is it. Nobody forced me, nobody preached it, nobody even sat me down. But this is exactly how environment works. It doesn't always teach loudly, it teaches quietly through normal daily life, constantly shaping your children's life. And you don't know it. I also remember a little girl I encountered. That little girl grew up in AJ City, Ajekule specifically. And you need to see this little girl, the way she talks, the way she behaved, the things she knew. There were things that were just above her as a child. I think as her then she was between 5 to 6 or 7 years. But you need to hear her talk. She's talking like a hardened street adult. And I'm wondering, is this not supposed to be a child? So the environment she had found herself did not give her the room to remain a child. The environment had forced her to grow into an adult, and she begins to communicate like an adult even though she is still a child. This is how the environment influences your child. This is how environment works. And many of us as parents, we are not paying attention to this. I would like us to also look at another rugged environment, Warri in Delta State, Nigeria. Now, Warri is known for bold, strong, and expressive people, and people that are usually confident with good character. Now, it has its own challenges. When you walk down the streets, the daily reality is a rough, high risk environment. Violence is localized as a normal response to conflict. You see people drinking alcohol across the street at the crack of dawn. You can see someone smoking freely on the street corners. And over time, children begin to see these things as a normal part of daily life. Now, what happens when a child grows up thinking that loudness is confidence, or that aggression is strength, or that survival is life, and that becomes their worldview? Now, I want to also share another encounter I had. I once met a set of teenage twins some time ago who had lived in Warri community for a very long time. These two teenagers could literally not express themselves in good English. All they know how to speak at that time were street slang and pidgin English. And because they were very close to me, I'll be like, you can't continue like this. They came to a different environment where everybody speaks well, and every time they want to speak they feel intimidated. They don't, even when they know what to say, they can't, because they could not just express themselves in the barest minimum they could, because they are shy and people there don't speak pidgin. So I had to start, oh, try this. Why? But you went to school, you went to this. They kept telling me, that's how we speak where we grew up. This is how. And the environment has shaped them to believe or to think that this is how people speak. So they are grown up where pidgin was the dominant way of communication. So even their confidence in structured English was affected. And it reminded me again, children don't just live in environments live in children. Also, even the kind of housing plays a role. The type of housing can influence a child, whether single room, flat, or a gated estate, is also something that we need to even pay attention to. A child growing up in a typical face me, I face you compound, or a single room where multiple people live in close quarter, that child has total liberty to spill out into the streets, mingle with friends around, and there is high influence of the neighbors and the environment on such a child. He or she is exposed to something differently compared to a child living in a gated estate. Not because one child is better than the other, but exposure is different, interaction is different, and the influence is also different. And what a child sees repeatedly often becomes what feels normal to them. What your child sees repeatedly in the environment they are growing in often becomes what feels normal. Now let's look at the long-term effect of environment on our children. We must understand how these environment shifts happen long term. What are the long term effects of your environment on your child? Because this is where many parents miss the bigger picture. The effect of the environment is not something that is obvious today. It is something that often shows up years later, because environment does not just shape a child's character or what they do, it shapes who they become. Now let me explain. Put down here that environment shapes language. A child who constantly hears respectful communication often learns how to communicate respectfully. But a child who grows up hearing insults, shouting, and abusive language every day may begin to speak that way without even realizing it. Not because they are bad, but because that language has become normal to them. Environment also shapes thinking. If a child grows up hearing statements like, people like us never succeed, life is unfair, nothing good comes out from this place, over time those beliefs can become part of the child's identity. Before they even attempt something great, they have already convinced themselves it is impossible. Environment shapes confidence. A child who is constantly encouraged, exposed to opportunities, and surrounded by people who believe in growth often develop confidence naturally. But a child who is repeatedly mocked, ignored, or exposed to fear-based environment may grow up doubting their own abilities. This is how environment begins to shape us. Environment shapes behavior. When children repeatedly see aggression used to solve problems, aggression begins to feel normal. When they see honesty rewarded, honesty becomes normal. When they see kindness practiced consistently, kindness becomes normal. Children often become what they repeatedly witness. Children often become what they repeatedly witness. Environment shapes relationship. Many adults struggle in friendship, marriage, and even parenting because of the relationship patterns they grew up seeing. A child who grew up seeing respect, forgiveness, and healthy communication learns one version of relationship. A child who grew up seeing constant conflict, disrespect, and hostility learns another part of relationship. Both children are still learning something. Now, environment also shapes value. What a community celebrates often becomes what children pursue. If character is celebrated, children values character. If money is celebrated above everything else, children may begin to believe that success is only about money. If popularity is celebrated, they may chase attention instead of purpose. And this is how environment also shapes our value. Environment shapes spiritual development. A child raised in an environment where God is honored, prayer is normal, and faith is practiced consistently is receiving spiritual formation every day. At the same time, a child raised where faith is ignored may struggle to see spiritual matters as important. Environment also shape dreams and ambitions, and this point is very important because many children never dream beyond what they have seen. A child cannot easily begin to imagine becoming an astronaut or an engineer or an entrepreneur or just one good profession when they have never seen such possibilities in their environment. The environment silently tells them this is what people become, this is what success looks like, this is how life works. And because of that, some children place limits on themselves long before life places limits on them. So when we talk about environment, we are not simply talking about street, buildings, or communities. We are talking about a force that is even shaping and influencing your children every single day, shaping your child's language, their thinking, their thoughts, their confidence, their values, their relationship, their faith, and even their future. Because long before children begin making conscious decisions, their environment has already begun shaping what they consider normal. Long before they even start making their conscious decision, long before they become aware, their environment is already shaping who they become and who they see themselves to be. Now, I know at this point, someone might be watching and be asking, so why are you giving us so much information and explaining things in detail about the environment? What am I supposed to do with this information? I didn't choose to live in a tough neighborhood. Economic realities place me here. What am I supposed to do with this information? Now, understanding the exact environment you are raising your child is not meant to make you feel guilty or condemned. It is meant to give you a critical self-awareness and make you to become self-conscious. Because when you know the happenings or exactly what your neighborhood is feeding your child with, you can begin to evaluate if that is what you want for their future. And if it isn't, it means that you have to begin to step up your parenting game by developing a more sophisticated, intentional method to neutralize that effect of the external environment on your child's upbringing. Now, should every parent relocate? No, of course, you can't relocate. This is exactly what you should do. The first step is to become intentional by first increasing supervision. Know where they go, know who influences them, know who your child is constantly with, know who you leave your child with, know who they play with. That Increase your supervision around your child. Secondly, build a strong family values. Home family values must become stronger than the value outside your environment. Thirdly, know their friends, know your children's friends, and beyond knowing their friends, know the parents of your children's friends. And this one is very important so that you can tell whether they are being raised up in the same value system you are giving your child at home. You must build a protective circle of influence around your child, actively vetting who has access to their ears. Know who your child is listening to on a daily basis, and you can, if you agree with me that friends have a stronger influence on our children. Fourthly, strengthen parent child relationship, because influence follow connection. Make sure that you have a good relationship, bond and connection with your child, so that at every time they can be open-minded and always come to you to discuss matters with you. And fifth, be intentional about exposure. Now, I have talked about how your child will be growing up in a particular environment, and that is how they begin, that shapes their worldview. They begin to think that, oh, this is how life is all about. So you can begin to intentionally create exposure by taking them to visit different environment. Take them on vacation if you can. Take them, maybe send them on an holiday to a trusted aunt, a trusted uncle, somebody that you know that can actually take care of them, so that they can have and be in another environment and know that, okay, this is how things are done. Let their mind be exposed. Take them out if you can, where they can view life in another way and experience life in a different and in a positive way from what they are used to. I beg you, if you can, do this one thing. And this last one, this video will not be complete if I don't add this special advice. Relocate if possible, but calm down, let me explain. If you are a young couple who are yet to start bearing child or having children, or intending couple who are about looking for where to settle down, or you are just planning to just relocate, please listen very carefully. Before you go ahead to rent that beautiful apartment or buy that beautiful house, just because it is fine or the rent is cheap, stop and look around. Consider the environment influence of that community on a future child. Consider the environmental influence of that community on a future child. Look very well. Don't just go to a place and rent an apartment and begin. Look at the environment. What is normal there? Does it look like what you will want for a future child? Let the serenity, the safety, and the moral character of the neighborhood be your number one priority before you sign a tenancy agreement. And for those who are already parenting, if you look around your community or your environment and you see that it is toxic and you have the financial capacity to relocate to another environment that is calmer and better to nurture your children, please, if you have the financial capacity, please do. If you can, make that sacrifice for your children's future, because environment matters. So many children turn out the way they turn out, not because their parents wasn't good enough, not because their parents didn't raise them well. It was just because it was the environment they found themselves, and that was what shaped their future and the entire being they become. So if you can, please make this sacrifice for the sake of your children's future. The truth is, we cannot stop the world from being what it is, but we can become deeply self-aware. We must constantly ask ourselves this question: what classroom is my child sitting in when they leave my sight? What is their current environment teaching them behind my back? This is the question that every parent must constantly ask themselves, and you should begin to ask yourself even right now. If there is one message I want you to take away from this conversation, is this: your physical environment is actively and constantly shaping your child every single day, and you must become completely aware, self-aware, and conscious of what it is teaching them. I want you to look at your environment and ask yourself, what is this environment really teaching my child? The lesson of this entire episode is simple. Your environment is raising your child too. Every street is teaching, every community is teaching, every country is teaching, every culture is teaching. The only question is, what is your child environment teaching them every single day? I would like to conclude with this Bible verse. The Bible reminds us in 1 Corinthians 15:33, be not deceived, evil communication corrupt good manners. Let me give an analogy to help you understand exactly what this scripture is saying. If you walk into a room where people are smoking fish, or you sit inside a local kitchen where firewood is burning for 2 hours, you don't need to touch the fish or go close to the fire yourself. But by the time you walk out of that room, your clothes, your hair, and your skin, everything about you will either be smelling the scent of fish or the scent of smoke. And anyone that comes around you will instantly know where you have been. Why? Because we begin to smell like the environment that we have been in long enough. We smell like the environment we have stayed in long enough. Whether we like it or not, environments shape us, and that is why parents must become intentional. In our next episode, we'll be looking at the most powerful environment of all. Not the country this time, not the community, the home environment. Because if the community influences the child, the home can either reinforce that influence or protect against it. And many parents are not even aware of what is quietly happening in their home. So next episode, we'll be looking at the home environment. And trust me, you don't want to miss that conversation. It is going to be another powerful one. But before you go, tell me in the comments, what is one thing that your environment taught you while growing up that is still affecting you today? I genuinely want to hear your story in the comments. Until then, keep being intentional and keep parenting for impact. See you in my next episode.